Good evening everyone, welcome to Bajirao IAS Academy, the Hindu news analysis. So today is 11th May 2025 and today we have some very important articles for the discussion. So one by one we'll try to discuss all these important articles in a very detailed and in-depth manner so that this discussion will be helpful for your examination. And the first very important topic, this article has been given in the Hindu newspaper, and this is very important topic because in recent times what has been happening is that India has been bilaterally tried to ink the free trade agreements with a number of countries, and as part of its effort to have a free trade agreement with European countries, India recently had a free trade agreement with UK. Now in this context, we'll understand what are the important areas that will be covered under India-UK Free Trade Agreement and how this free trade agreement will benefit India and UK as well, and how this free trade agreement with UK will become a model for other free trade agreements of India with US and other European countries including European Union. So firstly, we all knew because we have already discussed about the India-UK Free Trade Agreement, and in fact this free trade agreement is the result of nearly 3.5 years of effort from both sides. And finally India and UK, they have agreed to sign a free trade agreement this week. And in fact it is being said that this India-UK Free Trade Agreement is a landmark trade agreement because it will result in equitable and ambitious trade between the two large economies in the world. And in fact we all knew that India is the 5th largest economy in terms of GDP and UK is the 6th largest economy. So therefore these two economies are considered as two large economies in the world, and free trade agreement between these two large economies is one of the most significant and landmark agreement. And in fact, though the fine print has not yet been released, right? So what a fine print is actually the detailed map of or detailed description of India-UK Free Trade Agreement. So what are the essential items which are included in the free trade agreement, and what are the tariffs which are imposed by these countries on those products, right? So that is the fine print, but fine print has not yet been made public. But the domestic industry in India has welcomed this free trade agreement with the United Kingdom. However, despite the domestic industry welcoming this, there are certain concerns with respect to agriculture and micro, small and medium enterprises also. What are those concerns? We'll understand in the later part of the lecture. However, it is being said that this deal likely to be signed after 3 months and will take over a year to implement, right? So it will not be implemented immediately. However, it is expected that it will take another 1 year for the full-scale implementation. Now here it is given that first we'll try to understand what exactly a free trade agreement, because free trade agreements are recently in use and India has also been planning to have free trade agreements with number of other countries as well. Now when we talk about the free trade agreement is actually a trade deal between countries, and they primarily target to reduce the taxes and tariffs, right? So there are number of barriers. So those barriers can be categorized into trade barriers and tariff barriers and non-tariff barriers as well. But here the free trade agreement essentially aimed at reducing the taxes and other trade barriers on both goods and services that they trade with each other, and therefore the free trade agreement can actually make a trade between two different countries easier, cheaper and more efficient as well. So that is the advantage of the free trade agreement. So in the backdrop of US under Donald Trump imposing the reciprocal tariffs on number of countries, India having a free trade agreement with UK is a very significant aspect. And in fact, the free trade agreements can be between two different countries like India and UK, or between a group of countries as well, right? So in fact, it even covers areas like investment and online trade as well. So I hope you have understood what exactly is a free trade agreement. Now this free trade agreement India and UK have signed bilaterally. Now why the deal is significant for both India and UK, why it is important, so we'll try to understand this dimension as well. So first of all, if you can look into the data and statistics with respect to India's trade with UK and UK's trade with India. So UK is India's 16th largest trading partner. Similarly, India is the 11th largest trading partner for UK. So you just have to remember this, right? So as of now, UK is the 16th largest trading partner for India, and for UK, India is the 11th largest trading partner. And the free trade agreement between these two countries will benefit the bilateral trade among India and UK. It will benefit the businesses as well. However, this bilateral trade is about 60 billion US dollars, with India enjoying a positive trade balance. Now understand one thing, that as of now, the bilateral trade, so before signing a free trade agreement, the bilateral trade between India and UK is a 60 billion US dollars. Right? So however, within the 60 billion US dollars, India has been enjoying a positive trade balance. So I hope you knew what is a positive trade balance. For example, if we look at India's trade with China, so we have a negative trade balance. So that means we have been importing more items, more goods than what we export to China. But in this case, with respect to UK and most of the Western countries, India has been exporting more goods rather than what India has been importing from those countries, and UK is also the same category country. Now in this context, India has been enjoying a surplus trade balance with UK. However, with the signing of the free trade agreement, it is expected that the bilateral trade between India and UK is expected to double by 2030. So it expected to become double by 2030. So according to some government estimates. However, a new trade deal as assessed by the British government, so it would actually increase the bilateral trade by another 34 billion as well. Right? So overall, the free trade agreement will have a positive effect on the bilateral trade between India and UK, because this free trade agreement will likely increase the bilateral trade manyfold. Right? So that what that actually means. For example, as of now, India has been exporting $40 billion worth of goods to UK. So because of the free trade agreement, so if India exports 80 billion US dollar worth of goods to UK, that actually means that there will be more investment, more output, and apart from that, there will be more employment opportunities for Indians also. Right, so that is the advantage. Now Chinese economy is called as export-led economy because China produces in their country and they export to number of other countries, right? So it is not a consumption based economy, it is an export-led economy, right? So that's the main reason for China's exceptional growth in last 2 to 3 decades, right? So therefore a free trade agreement will also benefit India's economy as well. And in fact, this free trade agreements comes in the backdrop of a global trade reeling under uncertainty, particularly because of US president imposing tariffs and counter tariffs on number of different countries, right? So this is significant and this is important because it comes at the backdrop of US president imposing tariffs on number of other countries, including European Union countries, UK, India and China as well. And that is why this particular trade deal is very significant for both India and UK as well. Now, what are the expectations from the free trade agreement? So we'll understand what are the main expectations of the free trade agreement. However, so as I have already mentioned that a detailed, fine print of this free trade agreement is not yet made public. So we don't know the complete details about the free trade agreement. However, the British government has actually made it clear that it will benefit from India agreeing to slash tariffs on 90% of the product categories. So under the free trade agreement regime, India agreed to reduce tariffs on at least 90% of the product categories for export, with 85% of them becoming tariff free within a decade. Right? So initially a minimal amount of tariff will be imposed on goods that UK has been exporting to India, and over a period of time what these countries will do, completely do away with the tariffs. So thereby it will benefit the both countries. And in fact, the British government also estimated that around 534 million US dollar worth of tariffs would be saved when the deal is completely implemented or enforced, right? So ultimately it will be benefiting the UK economy as well, because it is going to save a huge amount of tariffs. On the other hand, India also expected to benefit from tariffs being eliminated on 99% of export product categories. So remember that if India has been exporting 100 different categories of goods to UK, and out of 100 different categories, 99% or 99 product categories will be exempted from the tariffs in UK, right? So that is how each of these countries are benefiting through signing a free trade agreement. However, it expects an increase in the export opportunities for sectors such as textile sector, leather sector, footwear sector, and automobile parts and engineering. Now, one thing that you should remember, when this free trade agreement is benefiting all these different sectors. Now, in fact, these are the sectors which are considered as labor intensive sectors in India, right? So they are labor intensive sectors in India. When the free trade agreement is benefiting these sectors, so that means it is going to create a good amount of employment opportunities in India as well. However, the alcoholic beverages from UK will now have a just 75% of tariff rate from present 150%. So presently India has been imposing 150% of tariffs on alcoholic beverages from UK, but this tariff will be reduced to 75%, and this would further reduce to 40% over a period of time, or within a decade, right? So this mechanism I have already explained, that these countries, once they have signed a free trade agreement, they gradually try to reduce the taxes or tariffs on these products. However, so with respect to services, how services are going to benefit from both US and UK. So in fact, India is largely known as a country which export a huge amount of services to other countries, particularly the European Union countries and UK. So India has secured an exception for Indian workers who are working in UK and their employers from paying a social security contributions. So generally, when Indian employees who are working in UK temporarily, so their employers and employees have to pay the social security contributions to the UK government. However, through this free trade agreement, exemption has been secured for 3 years under the double contribution convention. And in fact, the free trade agreement will also seek that visa process remain transparent and no unnecessary obstacles are created in professional travel as well. Right, so this is how these two countries are getting benefited from the free trade agreement. However, it is not free from the concerns. There are certain concerns as well, particularly on the Indian side, because in the beginning of this particular topic, I have told you that agriculture sector and MSME sector are going to face certain challenges because of the free trade agreement. Now understand one thing, that developed countries, the land holding size is very huge, and mechanization is implemented on a rapid scale, and countries also give a huge subsidies, and because of that reason they produce goods, agricultural commodities on a large scale, and they will start, they will be dumped in Indian markets, right? So when agricultural products are coming into Indian markets, so think about the Indian farmers who are having small land holdings and who are also taking their produce to the markets, because markets will be already distorted by the cheap imported agricultural commodities from these countries. So therefore it will affect the farmers as well. And the second thing that we need to discuss is about, it will also expected to impact the MSMEs and small industries in India, because once goods are produced in UK and they are being dumped in Indian markets, so think about the Indian manufacturing industries, particularly the small scale industries. So therefore there are certain concerns for both agriculture and MSME sector, because if Indian domestic industry is not competitive enough, in the sense that, for example, you compare UK's industry with India's industry. So UK's industry have more capital, they have more technology, and I would say the employees are also much more productive. So therefore, their products would be more competitive than the Indian products. So in that case, what happens that it will ultimately lead to the loss of Indian domestic industries, and that may create large scale unemployment opportunities as well. Large scale unemployment as well, because on the other hand, the free trade agreement is benefiting certain sectors, textile, leather, so these sectors, so these are labor intensive sectors, so they create gainful employment opportunities. But at the same time, there are some small scale industries, MSMEs, so which may not be competitive with UK's industries, UK's goods which are imported into India, and that will ultimately lead, or that will result in the unemployment as well. Right? So these are certain concerns that the Indian agriculture sector, farmers and MSMEs would face because of the free trade agreement. So here a detailed description of a free trade agreement, preferential trade agreement, comprehensive economic cooperation agreement, and comprehensive economic partnership agreement and economic cooperation agreement have been given. Because see, one thing that we should understand here, with UK we have signed a free trade agreement, that's good. But with other countries, for example, like with US and not US, with Australia and UAE, we have signed comprehensive economic cooperation agreement, comprehensive economic partnership agreement, right? So therefore it is important for us to understand these terms, right? So kindly go through this as well. And next important topic is a safe harbor mechanism. So we'll understand what exactly is a safe harbor mechanism, because it is regularly in use, and it is also important for you to understand the safe harbor mechanism, because the safe harbor mechanism is mostly related to the social media platforms and the fake news which being spread through the social media platforms. So we have seen during India-Pakistan crisis how a fake news flooded the social media platforms. Now in this context, it is very, very important to understand the safe harbor mechanism, right? The context is that, in a written submission to the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Communication and Information Technology, so Union Ministry of Information and Broadcasting said that it has been reconsidering the concept of safe harbor, right? So Union Ministry of Information and Broadcasting has been it has said that it has been reconsidering the concept of safe harbor for the social media platforms, particularly aimed at to combat fake news online. So fake news which spread through online, right? So we'll understand what exactly is a safe harbor mechanism. Now, so here in this image, it is given what is a safe harbor mechanism. Now, governments all across the world have realized that the intermediaries, what are those intermediaries? For example, here a Facebook, an intermediary, right? So Twitter, or now it is called as X, is an intermediary. So these intermediaries must be given protection from the legal liability that could arise out of illegal content posted by users. For example, imagine that there is a user A and intermediary called Facebook. So here a user A from a country, India, posted something on Facebook. So here Facebook is an intermediary and A is an user, and India is a country on which this content has been posted. So however, this particular content is hateful content, right? So it could incite violence. So in that case, the governments may take action on intermediaries, and governments may also take action against the individual who posted this information. So however, it is being felt that the governments across the world, so they have felt that it is important to take action against the individual who posted this information, but not against the intermediary which hosted this information, right? So that protection concept is known as the concept of safe harbor. So I hope you have understood this, right? So safe harbor mechanism protects a social media intermediary from the hateful misinformation or fake information posted on their platform, right? So that is what is called as the safe harbor mechanism. So I hope it is clear for you. Now here it is given in a detailed way what is a safe harbor mechanism. Now safe harbor mechanism is a legal concept, right? So it is a legal concept, and this safe harbor mechanism actually protects individual websites which follow or allow third party users to share content from a legal liability for any unlawful posts, right? So this safe harbor mechanism actually protects the individual websites or social media intermediaries that actually allow the third party users to share content from a legal liability for any lawful posts. And in fact, this concept of safe harbor mechanism was put in place in the early years of internet as a key safeguard to encourage innovation among the social media platforms and the social media intermediaries. And in fact, it also aimed at to prevent website owners from being unfairly hounded for content they had or no hand in publishing, right? So in fact, somebody else published a hateful message or misinformation or fake news on their social media intermediary, but this particular platform has no relation with that. So here it is very important that these social media platforms must be protected from such fake news, right? So because imagine that any country, for example, if it is not India, for example China, right? So imagine China. So in China, free speech is curtailed. So somebody else posted something against the government in Facebook or Twitter, right? So Facebook on Twitter. So Chinese government would make these platforms also liable for hosting such an information against the government. But safe harbor mechanism will actually protect the social media intermediaries from hosting such an information. I hope it is clear for you. And in fact, the concept of a middleman, now here the social media intermediaries are the middlemen, and concept of middleman being responsible for a third party content is known as intermediary liability. In case any third party posted any information which is found that it is inflammatory in nature, which has been inciting violence, which has been promoting terrorism. So if the governments hold the social media intermediaries as responsible, then it will be known as intermediary liability. However, the safe harbor mechanism will protect the social media intermediaries from intermediary liability. And safe harbor protects sites by default from any criminal action for content hosted by them. And in fact, in India, section 79 of the Information Technology Act provides this safe harbor mechanism. So therefore, there are certain social media platforms. To those social media platforms, section 79 of the Information Technology Act 2000 grants a certain immunities for hosting a third party information. However, the protections, particularly the safe harbor mechanism protections for the intermediaries, are not without conditions. So there are certain conditions which are also attached to the social media intermediaries when we have been providing a safe harbor mechanism under section 79 of the IT Act. Now in India, intermediaries receive actual knowledge. So imagine that, for example, X is a social media intermediary, and if X receives actual knowledge of their intermediary hosted some illegal content, right? So now they get to know that they have the illegal content on their website. So how they get to know that they have actually posted this illegal or hateful content on their website? So it could be through a court order or a government notification, right? So we'll understand this, it would be a little complex, right? So if an intermediary receives an actual knowledge that illegal content is on their website, then they will lose a liability protection under section 79, right? So if the intermediary get to know that any such hateful misinformation is posted on their website, if government is requested the intermediary to remove the such messages or such content, then if the intermediary is not acting as per the government orders or court orders, then it will be liable, or its safe harbor mechanism under section 79 will be stripped off, right? However, the Supreme Court has read down that actual knowledge actually means that either a court order or a government notification, and that's why it is said that section 79 is not absolute, but it is subjected to certain conditions attached to these intermediary platforms. However, without safe harbor protections, online intermediaries could face a tremendous consequences for illegal content, right? So if online intermediaries or social media intermediaries, so if they don't have the safe harbor protections, then they will face the tremendous consequences for hosting illegal content on their respective websites or social media platforms. However, for instance, in 2004, what happened was, the head of the website called eBay in India was arrested. So why? Because a user listing of a disc containing child sex abuse material for sale. So that's why the eBay India head was arrested, right? So here, a user is a third party. eBay is a social media intermediary. And if in case social media platforms, they don't have the safe harbor mechanism, then they will face tremendous consequences for the illegal content, and that was happened in the 2004 with respect to eBay, right? So I hope you have understood this with an example. And now, why government is considering amending the safe harbor clause? So why government wanted to amend the safe harbor clause? So there are some reasons why government wanted to amend the safe harbor clause. So the government has actually accused the foreign social media platforms for floating Indian laws, and also they are even acting very slowly when it comes to taking down the content which is abusive, hateful, which has been promoting or inciting terrorism or violence. So even if the government sends a notice to the social media intermediaries to remove the information, these social media intermediaries are acting too slowly, or they even flouting Indian laws, and that's the one reason for reconsidering the safe harbor clause by the union government firstly. And in fact, on multiple occasions, before Elon Musk acquired Twitter, it was now called as X, the platform had public confrontations with the union government regarding orders to hide the users' content, right? So when before even Elon Musk acquiring the Twitter, so Twitter actually had the public confrontations with the union government when it comes to the orders. It has received orders from the union government to hide users' account, but the Twitter refused to do so. And that's why it is very important that the union government felt to reconsider the safe harbor clause. And in fact, Now X under Mr. Elon Musk, it continued to fight the government's right to issue blocking or takedown orders. So if government finds any information is misinformation, fake news, or information which has been promoting violence, terrorism, the government immediately issues a notice to these social media intermediaries. But despite that, the social media platforms are refusing to either remove the information from their platforms or completely hide the user's content, because that could have a severe complications or implications, consequences for the public order. And that's very important here. So union government has pitched amending the safe harbor, and it will be a way to get platforms to be more proactive in governing their sites. And in case if the government amends the safe harbor clause, then it will make that the social media intermediaries or platforms will be more and more vigilant when it comes to hosting information which is abusive, information which is a fake news or a misinformation. Because it's not just about that, because you could even see that these social media platforms are flooded with artificial intelligence generated deep fakes, cyber frauds. So all these things are happening, and that's why the union government again felt the need to reconsider the safe harbor clause that has been provided to the social media platforms. And in fact, Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology has indicated that it would draft a Digital India Act, right? So it will draft a Digital India Act, and that would incorporate these changes that the union government has been planning to introduce for this safe harbor clause. But the outlines of how the safe harbor would change under this proposed law have not yet been revealed to the public. So I hope you have understood what exactly is a safe harbor mechanism and how this safe harbor mechanism has been misused by the social media platforms in India, and why the government has been planning to reconsider the safe harbor mechanism to hold the social media intermediaries liable. So in case if they are acting too slowly or if they flouting the Indian laws. So the next important topic is with respect to India's recent, a proactive, a nature of missile strikes or proactive response against the Pahalgam terror attack on Pakistan. Right, so we all knew that on February 22nd, around 26 tourists were killed by terrorists. And in fact, India has adopted an approach called zero tolerance to terrorism, right? So absolutely zero tolerance to terrorism. So as a response, and I would call this response from the Indian government as a proactive response. So as part of Indian government's response against this Pahalgam terror attack in Kashmir, so Indian government has launched strikes targeting terrorist camps in Pakistan. But this time the Indian government's target, so Indian government actually targeted, or the security forces in India have targeted the terrorist camps deep inside Pakistan. And that indicates there is a strategic shift in India's policy towards Pakistan when it comes to dealing with terrorism. Right? Because after the Kargil war incident, this is the first time that India has responded in such a massive scale. Right? So you could even see the videos about how India striking deep into the Pakistan terrorist camps. So not just terrorist camps, and even India strikes the air bases deep inside Pakistan. So therefore, the terms of engagement with the terror by the Indian government as a policy has changed. And in fact, recently Indian government has also announced that the act of terror would be seen as an act of war against India. So that is again a strategic shift in India's policy response, right? To make sure to compel and convince, to force Pakistan stop its support for cross-border terrorism. And that is the objective for India's changed stance and policy against terrorism. We all knew that Pakistan has been continuously supporting the cross-border terrorism, and India is suffering this because of this cross-border terrorism supported by Pakistan. Right, so Pakistan must address this issue, otherwise so it will lead to a massive escalation and even to a full-scale war as well. And now, and at another military confrontation between India and Pakistan, and it has came to an end because of the ceasefire that has been reached, an agreement that has been reached between both India and Pakistan. US President Donald Trump took credit for this, that US mediated between Pakistan and India, but a surprising ceasefire has been announced by both India and Pakistan, and after their most intense fighting in 2 decades in terms of engagement between Delhi and Pakistan. Right, so it is being said that the engagement between Delhi and Pakistan has been changed because India's response is more proactive response to this terrorism, and India's efforts to break out of constricting corner of Pakistan. So what is this constricting corner of Pakistan? That Pakistan is a nuclear weapon state. Pakistan has been promoting the cross-border terrorism. It has been encouraging terrorism. So that has been a little bit of a constraint for India to act against Pakistan. But India clearly showed that India has the capability and India has the ability to strike deep into Pakistan. So it can target any place or even military establishments also in Pakistan through this proactive response by the Indian security forces. However, despite this ceasefire has been announced by India and Pakistan, however, the most important thing that we have achieved through this proactive response is that the willingness and ability to attack Pakistan's heartland in West Punjab. So India dared to attack deep inside Pakistan, and Pakistan has also suffered a massive blow because of these strikes. And secondly, India has suspended the Indus Water Treaty. So that means we have reopened the Indus Water Treaty, that Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government has been time and again saying this, that the Indus Water Treaty is arbitrary, irrational, and therefore there is a need to review the Indus Water Treaty, because 80% of the waters have been allocated to Pakistan and just 20% of the waters have been given to India. So therefore there is a need to review the Indus Water Treaty. So through this proactive nature of India to the cross-border terrorism supported by Pakistan, India again reopened the Indus Water Treaty. However, since the NDA government came to power in 2014, so it sought to alter the traditional terms of engagement with Pakistan. Right, so because Pakistan has been known as a country which has a nuclear weapons, and at the same time it is a rogue, irresponsible state with having its support to cross-border terrorism, and that continues to affect India. And in fact, so if you look at India's previous responses under Prime Minister Narendra Modi to the acts of terrorism, so you could clearly see that when Uri terror attack took place in 2016, so Indian government signaled that line of control was not, or it's no longer, a sacrosanct. So we don't respect the line of control, and in fact Indian security forces crossed the line of control, and we have conducted the surgical strikes at that point of time as well in the Pakistani occupied Kashmir. However, in the wake of Pulwama terror attack in the year 2019, Delhi chose to go beyond Pakistan occupied Kashmir and attack terror camps in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Right, so you could see that Indian security forces trying to inflict major damages on Pakistan whenever such a terrorist attack took place in Indian soil. So this followed in 2019 itself, Article 370 was abrogated. So Article 370 has provided special status to Jammu and Kashmir, and the very same year Delhi changed the constitutional status quo in Kashmir. And by abrogating Article 370 by the Indian government, the message that India sent to Pakistan was that the status of Jammu and Kashmir will no longer be on the table for talks with Pakistan. Right, so that is the message that the Narendra Modi government sent to Pakistan, or the NDA government sent to Pakistan. However, in the recent or current crisis, Delhi actually reached deep into the Punjab to hit terror camps there. So Indian security forces not only hit the terrorist camps. So you can see that Muzaffarpur, Kotli, Gulpur, Bimber, Sialkot, Chak Amru, Morduke, Bahawalpur. So these are the terrorist camps that Indian security forces hit with utmost precision. But apart from that, India hit deep into Pakistan, and Indian security forces even targeted the military establishments of Pakistan in later retaliatory strikes. So therefore, it indicates that the ability of Delhi to hit targets deep inside Pakistan, sending a strong message to Pakistan that Indian security forces can hit any part of Pakistan despite you are having nuclear weapons. So you need to immediately stop support to the cross-border terrorism, and that this is the strong message that New Delhi has been giving to Pakistan. And in fact, the government is saying that it will no longer hold back countering the sources of terror, because the government has declared that any any act of terror will be considered as a war against India. So therefore, there will be a massive response against Pakistan. Right, so that is also a strong message sent by the Indian side to Pakistan, because Pakistan has been continuously supporting the cross-border terrorism. So the evidence suggests that. Now, one of the key outcomes of the present crisis is the decision to suspend the Indus Water Treaty, and it will also result in either not complete suspension, but there will be a review of the Indus Water Treaty, because 80% of the waters were given to Pakistan and just 20% of the waters are given to India only. So therefore, this will result in reconsidering or reviewing the Indus Water Treaty, or changing the terms of the treaty as well. And in fact, so when India and Pakistan were facing this conflict, or striking each other, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio claimed on Saturday that both sides agreed to talk a broad set of issues and at a neutral site, and both India and Pakistan agreed for a ceasefire as well. But it has to be seen whether India will be willing to talk to Pakistan on this matter, right? So whether there will be talks between these two countries, it remains to be seen, because in Pakistan it is not the civilian government, it is the military which controls everything. So since Asim Munir became the chief of army in Pakistan, right, so it completely becomes anti-India, or he's so therefore it is not sure whether these two countries will go for talks at a neutral venue or neutral site or not. And in fact, India needs to wait and see whether Pakistani side, particularly Pakistani army, will be sincere when it comes to implementing the ceasefire or not. Because ceasefire, it is said that after the ceasefire has been announced, Pakistan again started attacking India, right? So, or firing drones towards India. So therefore, it has to be seen whether Pakistan is sincere in implementing the ceasefire agreement or not, right? So however, it is expected that as of now, the tensions between India and Pakistan have relaxed because of this ceasefire, but it is expected to be seen how it turned out to be. But Pakistan, one thing is very sure, that the talks to proceed it is very important that Pakistan should withdraw its support to cross-border terrorism. It should be very sincere when it comes to acting against terrorism that has been affecting India. So that's all in this lecture, and thank you so much. And if you have any doubts regarding this class, so please comment those doubts, and we'll answer those doubts as well. And thank you so much.